Good day, friends and well wishers, and the conscionable people around the world. It's uh, it's April the 17th, and the year is 2022. I just want to share some thoughts that cross my mind, and before I do that, I I invite you to watch a video clip along with me, and after that I'll give my takeaway, and you decide and you be the judge of what you want to think. Just give me 1 minute.
In speaking to NATO, you called them weak. In speaking to the UN Security Council, you said if you can't help, you shouldn't exist. Not very diplomatic of you. I wonder why you feel the need to speak so bluntly.
Граєшся в дипломатію.
When you're working at diplomacy, there are no results.
Це дуже бюрократично.
All of this is very bureaucratic. That's why the way I am talking to them is absolutely justifiable.
У мене немає.
I don't have any more lives to give. I don't have any more emotions. I'm no longer interested in their diplomacy that leads to the destruction of my country.
So, you heard what Zelensky was telling the world, right? Maybe a realization, but belated realization, putting the faith in US imperial power and the Western European countries, right? And the NATO forces, and US is the leader. It's like a gang. It's today we have 30 countries in the NATO alliance, US and Britain. US is the leader, Britain is the bosom buddy, and all these countries are with them. Zelensky really thought that US would come to their rescue at a time. He really thought he could rely on US. But US government, like any government, there's sometimes there is a certain amount of how do you say moral conscience involved. US does not have that. It just I'm just going by, it's a outrageous comment on my part. I shouldn't be saying it. It's all about US is in it for money. US doesn't care what happens to Ukraine, and US is doing everything to destroy Ukraine, supplying the NATO forces. They're not fighting, but they are pumping all the money and the weapons. Who is suffering? It's Ukraine. Whose country is getting destroyed? It's Ukraine, right? And it is sad to see that these powers, the Western NATO alliance, US being the biggest culprit and leading them, trying to destroy a country, its people, for their own gain, and the Ukrainian leaders are in it for money, no matter which way you look at it. If you go back like for 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, there was a Ukrainian, when the Ukrainians were fleeing neighboring countries, it was on news. A former Ukrainian minister's wife was trying to escape with 2 suitcases. Was it in Romania, or I believe it was subject to correction, the neighboring neighboring country. But when she was stopped at the border, and when they checked, in one suitcase she had 28 million US dollars. In the other suitcase, guess How much? 1.3 million euros. How did ex former ministers is not even said to be holding a portfolio in the uh, at at the present time, a former erstwhile minister, his wife. Where does this money come from? This is the money they steal from. They have ways or means of stealing money. Like, it's a harsh term, stealing, right? Denigrating. But if you touch something that doesn't belong to you, what is it, right? I call it stealing, whichever way. And this is big money. And ministers, politicians are paid a salary like any other CEOs or any other corporate executives. But how did they make so much money within 4 years or 5 years, whatever the uh, term of their office, right? So all these NATO leaders, they all get rich. They're stealing the resources that belong to the people of the world. The world is for everybody. What is US doing? US is the biggest, talks as though they have, they try to be like, they they talk like they have the highest moral ground to preach to the world. But everything morally, ethically, legally questionable things, they talk about Russia saying it's a genocide and whatnot. Did what did US do in the other countries? They interfered since the Second World War ended. They interfered in 27 countries. All these countries are nothing but a total mess today. It's their economy ruined, people suffering. They go interfere in the country, and then they call it regime change. Regime change for what? Because they want puppet leaders. And the leaders, the puppet leaders they elect, they get rich, and they, when that country is in a, leave the country is in a total mess, and they get away with stealing people's money. Everywhere, all over the world, corruption is rife. In some countries it's rampant, in the other countries it's latent, right? And what happened to an oil rich country like Venezuela? Without who was involved in, who was it not US that got involved in, who was who had a hand in the Venezuelan government, the country? Now the economy is in rack and ruins today, in total doldrums. They, and an oil rich country like Venezuela. What happened to the other countries in South America? How many South American leaders were assassinated by the CIA? Who is calling the shots? Are the leaders we elect? Are the spy agencies like the 17 spy agencies, US, uh, the at the helm of it is CIA? The atrocities they have committed, it's unbelievable. Did they not commit genocide in Iraq? And what did they do in Panama? What happened to Noriega? Yes, who elected Noriega to power? Who elected Saddam Hussein? It was US. They can create. In 2014, the pro-Russian leader in Ukraine was ousted. Who created this the coup, the coup d'état in Ukraine? It doesn't make it to the public scrutiny. Everything is suppressed. But US comes out and talks like we are the saviors of humanity, right? I'm not saying Russia is any better, but by far US is the worst, right? That said, so Russian leader has realized, and he doesn't want to be a part of NATO anymore, and his frustration is palpable, right? And see, leaders are okay, even if this, whichever way it goes, it has to end sooner or later. But Zelensky is going to be fine. It's the people, Ukrainian people, who lost everything. Their country is in total chaos. How many years it's going to take to rebuild that country? If you have been, I have been to Ukraine. It's such a nice, beautiful country, and I'm so sad to see what's going on, what has happened to Ukraine. But their people don't understand. It's all passions and emotions. Oh, nobody comes to our country. We are not that. So is going with America is better, right? Why? Why was Ukraine invaded? Nobody talks about it. Did in 1991, Soviet Union disintegrated. The leader at the time, Soviet Union, in the Malta conference asked George H.W. Bush, who was the vice president of US, Ronald Reagan was had a big hand in the Soviet disintegration, let alone the world events like the Middle Eastern oil prices that made Soviet Union bankrupt. But US was always in the Middle Eastern oil business, and US leaders gleefully laughing and smiling inwardly when Soviet Union was suffering. That's what they want. They want to see. In fact, see, all these countries wanted to join NATO. Putin asked once back, I believe in 1991, when Clinton was the president. He wants to be part of. He said, "Let Russia join the NATO." Right? What's wrong with that? Right? America doesn't want that. Right? Why? All these countries coming together, working for a common welfare of humanity. What's wrong with that? No. That's not what America wants. They are talking about the other people being war criminals and whatnot. Who they, does does America have any right to say that? The worst war crimes have been committed by America, and they are pointing fingers as though they have the moral ground, holier than thou, right? Just if I can show when Putin made the uh, request to join NATO back in. Let me see if I can pull it up. Bear with me for a second. Folks, please watch this clip.
Than that, I will say one thing that I have never said before in public. I will say it for the first time. Back in 2000, when President Bill Clinton was visiting Moscow at the end of his term, I asked him how would America see Russia joining NATO. I would not give you all the details of that conversation, but the reaction to my conversation looked, well, very reserved, let me put it this way. And how did Americans really look at this possibility? You can see it in their practical steps.
Simple. If they can accept Russia into the NATO, the world would be one, and nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. This is John Lennon saying, imagine there is, anyway. And so that's not what they want. That's not what US wants. They want their own way to destroy Russia. Why can't all these powers come together, work for the well-being and the welfare of humanity without trying to be, oh, this is my country, we have to get rich, suppress and destroy another nation, right? At the expense of the suffering of another nation, why do you want to wield power? It's not even animals do this. Animals are by far a better species. Humans are the worst ever species inhabited this world, and it's nothing is going to change. The greed and the power is so addictive. Do they have humanity in their heart? Yes. When they speak the best of things. Like, they're all preachers, holier than thou. And people don't see it. And just one more thing before we go, I will raise one more question. Please watch this clip along with me, so that you will know what I'm talking about. Thank you.
We're over here.
Because we're over here.
Right.
And this is the first war that we're watching through social media and through real-time interviews and pictures. But I love what Zelensky said about the UN. I'm going to read you a quote, and I want you to tell me if you know who this is. I discovered that the world should be divided not into good and bad people, but into cowards and non-cowards. 95% of cowards are capable of the vilest things, lethal things, at the mildest threat. Anyone? Anyone? Varlam Shalamov, the Russian writer who was
going to say that.
who was this close.
Pat had it.
You know,
Having a good time.
I was going to say Gallagher. But anyway.
he spent the better part of 15 years in forced labor camps under Stalin, right? So this guy knows what he's talking about. I think there are a lot of cowards in the UN, and I love what he said to them. What are you about?
Yeah.
What are you even doing to help here? I mean, I think we know, if you want to choose a side or the other, I'm choosing the side that got attacked.
Exactly.
I'm backing this side because they did nothing to bring this on.
Right.
But what has the UN ever done? Why do they exist?
They
Yeah.
eat lunches.
They eat lunches, they gather, they tell their nice speeches.
They
do
snarl
stuff.
traffic.
They snarl traffic.
Really? You're choosing the side that got attacked, not knowing what happened, and you already take sides? Why was Ukraine get attacked? Nobody wants to know anything about it, or nobody knows anything about it. Let me give it to you. In 1991, Soviet Union, the 15 countries were disintegrated due to the oil prices, the way it was manipulated by the Middle Eastern countries. Of course, the biggest player behind all these dirty games would be none other than Uncle Sam. And that said, Russian economy was in doldrums. They couldn't go anymore. Gorbachev was the leader of Soviet Union. 15 countries. It's like European Unions at that time, Soviet Union, 15 countries. And what happened there? So Ronald Reagan, the American president, had a big hand in the Soviet. He seized the opportunity to destroy Soviet hegemony. Sometimes blatantly, sometimes latently, playing the game. To tell you the truth, Bin Laden was the American hero at one point when in 1979, when Russia invaded Afghanistan. Russia stayed there 10 years and they couldn't go anymore because the Russian economy is relatively so smaller than US, because the US, their GDP is almost like 21 times greater than Russian. So you need money. So Bin Laden belonged to a rebel group known as Mujahideen. When he was attacking, when he was fighting the Russian soldiers, he was the hero of the highest caliber. And US Ronald Reagan invited Even today, you can go check on YouTube. We are living in a digital era. It's not like the old print media. You had to go back into a library and read. Uh, Bin Laden's deputies and his leaders, the leaders who worked under him. Bin Laden was the topmost leader of Mujahideen, and these leaders were invited to White House. They were given everything they need to house Russians: money, the armaments, munition, whatever you call it, and who did that? Ronald Reagan did that. You can go check. Ronald Reagan talking to them in White House, and they were treated like VIPs. They are the best friends, right? But then, almost like I guess a decade later, Bin Laden turned against U.S. 9/11 came about. Now, the Patriot became the terrorist, the most wanted terrorist in the world. So, what's the difference between a patriot and a terrorist? Like Sidney Sheldon in one of his books, he said there is no distinction between a patriot and a terrorist. The only thing that makes the difference is who is ruling at the time. So that's true. Today, there's nothing noble about politics or these world leaders or any leaders, where really you will find someone who has a human conscience and who wants to work for humanity. But such people will not last in politics. They will all these bad groups will come together and they will oust him. We have seen it happening, right? So that said, that's how it is, right? US used Ukraine for their political ambitions. Ukraine is the sacrificial lamb in the altar for US ambitions, US greed, US hegemony, US to for US to consolidate its imperial power, right? And these innocent Ukrainian people, their passions are evoked by the media and the US leadership and whatnot. And people are the sacrificial lamb. They are the sheep. They don't understand what's the reality of the world, right? They go with their passions and emotions. They think they are being heroic. They are not being heroic. They are rather being, not smart. I wanted to say stupid, but I don't want to. It sounds bad, right? And 80% of the world population is idiotic. They are manipulated by the ruling powers. As long as they are idiotic, the ruling powers and the individuals in these ruling powers can stay, their power is consolidated. The moment people become aware, people's awareness is dangerous, right? And when people become aware of what is going on, the powers are on shaky grounds, right? You don't want that. So they will do anything. They'll use the media, everything to, the propaganda to brainwash you. So as for this question, this woman saying, "Oh, I'm with the losing, I'm with the side that got attacked." Why did Ukraine get attacked? The answer is Ukraine got attacked more than one reason. It's now coming out, and it's yet to be verified, and we are yet to see the evidence, but it is coming to limelight that US, the culprit is always US. US, just like they funded the Wuhan virus in the Wuhan laboratory, they had biolabs in Ukraine. They were funding US interest groups, funding US biolabs in Ukrainians. 3 pathogens and 6 viruses were let out, or whatever that was. We will find out sooner or later, but it will come, but then it will be too late. It's always information comes rather late, but then the damage is done. So that's So Russia is said to be the country that's suffered the biggest death toll after uh, US and US India. Russia is the third country that lost so many human lives to COVID-19. Now they are thinking it's not entirely a virus that came from China, but Ukraine has been uh, has been uh, working taking of the being funded by US. Their biolabs have been creating 6 viruses and 3 pathogens. Are these are these and they said to be labs? How many there are, we are yet to know. That's one reason. And number two, Ukraine wanted to join NATO. That's the biggest betrayal to Russia, because NATO forces will be in their backyard and their front yard. If Ukraine, the Black Sea, it's their front yard or backyard, both ways, right? And so American forces are going to be there. Can you humiliate a nation any more than this? That's that. And thirdly, right now, now Ukraine, the untold reason, Ukraine is said to have immense potential, with just like Russia with the Nord Stream, the oil reserves in the Siberian region. Ukraine is said to Russia as the Russia Russian gas and oil is highly desirable because the, it's said to be not harmful to the environment because it doesn't emit its natural gas and oil. It doesn't emit carbon dioxide, unlike petroleum oil that US produces or Canada produces or Middle East produces. The other country is Iran, producing natural gas and oil. Ukraine has immense potential, and it even has shale gas, even a much better quality of gas coming from the sea, the rocks that the sea, the rocks in the sea. And I don't want to get too technical and sound like a geologist. I hardly know. I'm just gathering information. And that said, so Russia is not going to let go of Ukraine, right? And Ukraine want to sell itself to US. If US gets involved in the Ukrainian oil business, heaven, God forbid, right? What US has done. I mean, around the world, causing all this chaos and everything, and yet pretending to be the savior of humanity. So that's reason number two, or number three. And now, Finland, is it Finland? No, Norway and Sweden want to join the NATO. They were neutral countries, right? So Russia would be encircled by the NATO forces. Could you do anything more harmful to a nation? I mean, Russia is, if the world was bipolar, it's always Russia and US. It's an it's it's a formidable adversary. That's what bothers US. Why can't Russia be accepted into the NATO? The world will be one, right? There's nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too, like John Lennon's song, right? But US doesn't want to do that. The leaders, they're trying to destroy this world, destroy this planet belongs to everybody, human species, in spite of the geographical borders and demarcations. The world should be one. The world resources should be used for the welfare of humanity, not for the leaders we elect for them to rob and stash it away in off jurisdiction accounts. That's all I have to say. people need to be aware. The more people become aware, otherwise we are silently participating in the most atrocious, abominable activity in the world. Silently, unconsciously, we are participating in it, knowingly or unknowingly. So just look up for information. Don't go by what media says. Do your own. We are living in a digital world, right? Everything at the touch of, with a handheld device, you can check all the information. And people are addicted to entertainment. They don't care as long as it's, if a bomb goes off in Middle East, it's news. But if a bomb goes off in your backyard, it's not news anymore. That's the detached attitude people have. As long as it's my country, my people, my family, humanity should, you have to have some degree of conscience when you see these things. I wouldn't want to say anything more. Thank you, and thanks for tolerating me, my long monologue. Thank you.